Hello, my fellow spirit souls. Benjamin Paulides here. I'm picking up where I left off on Spiritual Master. So this will be part 2 of a 3-part series where I'm reading from Amritavani, Nectar of Instruction for Immortality by His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakura. So I read the first 24 points from the chapter yesterday. And today I will be reading the next 24 points. We'll see where it goes. And I'll be giving my commentary and, filling in any gaps that I feel, Krishna inspires me to share with you guys. So here it goes. 25. Is it most essential to serve the spiritual master? It is extremely necessary to worship the spiritual master. Even if we want to become a successful karmi, jnani, or sense enjoyer, we require a spiritual master's guidance. But the knowledge imparted by spiritual masters teaching such things produces insignificant results. A bona fide spiritual master, however, does not award temporary or insignificant results. A real spiritual master awards actual auspiciousness. As soon as we forget the compassion our spiritual master has shown us, we invite material desires into our hearts. If the Vaishnavas who are fixed at the spiritual master's lotus feet do not instruct us how to approach, serve, and deal with our spiritual master, we may lose a coveted jewel. So there's this affliction that I've noticed within spiritual life where people think that humility means submission to higher authorities that are materialists, but that's not it at all. If we have spiritual knowledge, we're obliged to share it with others, and we should seek out those people who are independently self-realized, not necessarily part of an institution. Now, of course, within every institution, there are people who, can be sincere. However, within the demoniac world that we currently find ourselves in, the situation is within institutions is pretty antithetical to making spiritual advancement. Now, that won't be the case for very much longer, especially as we move into Aquarian energy, which it kind of like kicked off starting with I think it was December 21st, the grand conjunction where Saturn and Jupiter entered Aquarius. And so for 200 years, we'll be more in air energy rather than earth energy, which means a more dynamic chance for spontaneous love and devotion, rather than the more rigid, structured devotion that we've experienced for, the last 2,000 years. 26. Is the spiritual master fully independent? My spiritual master is completely independent. He is not dependent on the mercy of anyone in this world. His good wish is that everyone sincerely worships Hari. He considers giving others instruction on how to satisfy Krishna's senses as the best form of compassion. He considers teaching others to fuel their sense gratification envy, not mercy. The spiritual master is not our material friend. He is our eternal well-wishing advocate. To flatter, that can actually be the sign of an enemy, and we should be very wary of accepting excess flattery or excess criticism from anyone, because they're a duality in this material world. Now, if we see someone that is down, we should certainly build them up. And if somebody is too puffed up, we shouldn't necessarily lash out at them, but neither should we give them our attention, because it will just further propagate their diseased condition through this material space-time. 27. Do we get a spiritual master by the Lord's mercy? If we ever become fortunate enough to receive a bona fide spiritual master, all credit goes to Krishna alone. Through the spiritual master, Lord Krishna awards us the benediction of fearlessness. Only the fortunate receive this opportunity. An appropriate spiritual master comes to an appropriate person. Yeah, I was worshiping the kind of omniscient all when I was in film school. And then after 2 months of thinking I was some sort of god amongst men, I was very puffed up. I broke down in my shower one day and started crying and begged the omniscient all to deliver me to a guru, a shaman, someone. And on that day, I received A.C. Bhaktisiddhanta Swami Prabhupada's books at the Griffith Observatory, which I found to be very auspicious, a synchronicity of fate. Of course, there are no mistakes. There's no Sanskrit word for mistake, which is the oldest language given to us by God. So as we progress further and further, I think people are becoming more and more aware that there are no mistakes and that everything is connected. We all are in a giant dance with God. And it's so beautiful when you can finally recognize that and it comes to the forefront of your consciousness. 28. Should we enjoy items meant for the spiritual master's service? It is an offense to enjoy items offered to the spiritual master. If we do not engage our ears in hearing Harikatha, topics about Krishna, if we engage our eyes only in measuring objects we can see, our nose in smelling fragrances, our tongue in relishing palatable foods, and our body in enjoying the sense of touch, then we must be thinking those ingredients meant for the spiritual master's service are objects for our own enjoyment. This means that we are treating the spiritual master as if we are an insignificant, ordinary human being. Now, in the preliminary stages, it's very normal to want to enjoy things. We've been conditioned and programmed to be enjoyers in this world, but so it takes a little bit of a reconditioning process to understand that we aren't enjoyers, but we are in fact servants. We're slaves to God. But in this material world, we're slaves to our false sense of ego, or to material masters, a boss, a parent, whatever it is. And so the whole point of the reconditioning program that is outlined in the Vaishnava literature is to get us to the point where we can realize that we are parts and parcels of the Supreme, without having to rely on institutional authority figures who will inevitably misguide us because they are looking out for, economic interests, religiosity, sense gratification, all things that don't have to do with the Supreme Soul that is within your heart. And so we require a spiritual master who can reconnect us with the super soul that is within ourselves, rather than having to rely on these so-called authority figures. 29. Should everyone be respected as a spiritual master? One should not disobey his spiritual master. We should not blaspheme the Vedic literature or disrespect the guru by considering many persons his equal. The only benefit the living entities can experience is to take complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. My spiritual master is an ocean of mercy. A single drop of that mercy ocean can drown me in an ocean of auspiciousness and happiness. Out of great compassion, my spiritual master used to tell me, "Give up your high education, sanctity, high birth, and come to me. You do not need to go anywhere else. Whatever you need, whatever house, palace, knowledge, self-control, or renunciation, you will attain simply by coming to me. Do not run after these insignificant material objects. Do not consider them the goal of your life. Ordinary people consider such things important." Yeah, if you just drop everything and follow me, because I am fully Krishna conscious, that's the platform from which a spiritual master operates. That's humility, is saying, I'm a servant of Krishna, follow my example. Paul gives that same example. I think it's in 1 Corinthians 11, trust in me as I trust in Christ. So to be a good disciple means to be a good spiritual master to others, and to follow in the footsteps of our spiritual master. It doesn't mean to mimic him, but it means to find what gives us juice in life, how we can channel the Supreme Lord's energy and give it to others through our unique personal relationship with him. So I was in filmmaking, I was in athletics, I was in these different things, and so I can use those in his service. It's not that I have to falsely renounce those and say, oh no, I'm a follower of God now, I have to do it this specific way. No, it's much more dynamic than that. That's personal. That's a personal relationship with God. And we all have that. We're all a unique drop in his endless ocean. 30. What quality must we possess before we make disciples? We don't need to make disciples, we need to become disciples. In other words, we must always engage in the service of Guru and Krishna. The Vaishnavas, the devotees of Vishnu, see the spiritual master in everything. If we are proud to be Vaishnavas, we cannot serve Lord Vishnu or the Vaishnavas properly. Quote, I don't do anything myself, rather I do whatever the Lord makes me do. Persons devoid of this mentality and engaged in the Lord's service can actually benefit other living entities by helping them become inclined toward Krishna. Simply speaking, about humility is useless. One has to be firmly convinced that I am actually directed by the Lord. And to get there, we need to understand that we are not this body that we temporarily inhabit, nor are we our mind or our intellect, the things that we collect. We are an eternal fragmental part of his divine energy, his consciousness. That is the only eternal part of our being. And once we realize that, then we can use the body that we have in his service. But until then, we will think that we are in control of this body, when in fact, it is quite the opposite. 31. Did you make disciples? I have not made anyone my disciple. Those who are considered my disciples by others are actually my spiritual masters. To associate with others means to accept something from them. I do not accept anything from anyone except that which I receive from my spiritual master. I do not engage in any activity under anyone's order except the order of my spiritual master. We should not accept anything from anyone for ourselves. If anyone faithfully and gladly gives us something we can use to serve Guru and Krishna, we should happily accept it and then use it for the Lord's service. Then we will achieve auspiciousness. If we learn the mystery of engaging everything in the Lord's service without looking at it with an enjoying spirit, we can enter the kingdom of God. 32. Can an ordinary man speak about the spiritual world? Only those who have descended from the spiritual world can speak about the spiritual world. No one from this world can speak about the spiritual world. When the living entities are fortunate enough to hear about the spiritual world from those who have come from the spiritual world, they gain the opportunity to know about Vaikuntha. We cannot understand transcendental topics by mundane consideration. It is not proper to make a compromise between the transcendental and the phenomenal. If we are fortunate, we will meet a Vaikuntha man. Therefore, Sri Chaitanya Dev states in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna yadi kripa karde kona bhagyavane, Guru antaryami rupe sikaya apane. Krishna is situated in everyone's heart as the Chaitya Guru, the spiritual master within. When he is kind to some fortunate conditioned soul, he personally gives him lessons so he can progress in devotional service, instructing the person as the super soul within and the spiritual master without. Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila. Yes, so a spiritual master gives us a heading, steer your ship in this direction. But then the super soul is the compass that keeps us on the right, straight and narrow on that path. So we need both. We need a proper heading and we need the internal compass. And that is the spiritual master and the super soul within. However, in our polluted condition, we cannot access the super soul within. So initially, the spiritual master's duty is to help the individual purify their vessel. Now, you look around and there's so many things to impurify our vessel, right? So you have fluoride in the water. You have all the chemicals manufactured by men of demoniac nature in pharmaceuticals and in the food supply. So if you eat anything that you don't know where it came from, or that it's, an organic, unpolluted piece of we call it boga, which is just, it's food that has yet to be offered to Krishna. You're bringing that into your vessel and it can really cause havoc. So we require to be, taught properly how to interface with this world while retaining our spiritual essence. And that's why it says in the Bible, be in the world but not of the world. So anybody who's advocating for you to, oh no, it's okay, you can eat this, you can inject yourself with that, or you can watch this. No, anything that goes through the city of the 9 gates, which is your body, 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, a mouth, 2 ears, an anus, and a genital tract. Though, it's very, your body's a temple. And so if you let things in through those 9 gates, you're going to become polluted, especially if they were created by men of material mind. So this is something to think about. 33. When will we achieve auspiciousness? Only when we hear Harikatha from saintly persons and the Mahajans, and then follow in their footsteps, can we achieve auspiciousness. In order to make pots, we must first take lessons from a potter. Then we must start to work. Similarly, we do not follow the most experienced persons, but try to achieve something by our independent endeavor. We will face many obstacles on the path to success. We will also fail to understand the purport of Scripture and become controlled by mental speculation. It is our duty to take shelter of a spiritual master. There is no other way to realize the absolute truth than to follow the disciplic succession. Without smearing the dust from the lotus feet of the Akinchana Mahajans on our body, we cannot see or realize anything. Only Mahajans can protect us from the spell of misconception. We can realize the absolute truth only when we take shelter of a spiritual master and serve Krishna under his guidance. This is a very important point. There is no other way to realize the absolute truth than to follow the disciplic succession. So, learning from Krishna is like a family tree, right? We must follow those who came before us and learn from them, and then blaze our own trail from there. If we don't learn and we blaze our own trail, we're going to glide right down into hell. And that's what's happening in this world right now. Everybody is their own quote-unquote spiritual master. They're not following those who have come from a line of self-realized souls. There are many, there's a structure within, it's coming to mind is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They have a lead prophet. Now that lead prophet recently came out and advocated for injecting bodily vessels with a experimental biological agent, and claimed it to be, for the global, his duty as a global citizen. Now this is totally backwards. If we're a leader and we're advocating for people to put things into their body that we don't know what the effects are on their subtle body, and it gets me very upset that we have so-called leaders of religious institutions advocating for the pollution of the bodily vessel. We feel Krishna, we feel God through our body. Now, if our body is impure from watching the wrong things, eating the wrong things, I will stress this point continuously, you'll hear me, because until we can feel Krishna, we won't believe that Krishna is real. So we need to feel him, and that requires a leap of faith. It requires us to get off the pharmaceuticals, to, eat properly, to learn how to eat properly. This is all so important. So I won't beat it further, but yes, if we follow those in the disciplic succession, we will be okay, because they can teach us the ways. (34) Who follows the path of argumentation? As long as people accept the path of dry argument, they cannot find a bona fide spiritual master. The path of argument causes us to doubt the fact that there cannot be any truth superior to or separate from the spiritual master's teachings. Those who follow the path of argument disregard the spiritual master. The spiritual master alone is capable of removing all doubts and misconceptions. Dry argument has no foundation or standing. The truth received through disciplic succession does not change. The spiritual master gives us that unchangeable truth. The conception maintained in the argument-prone hearts of those who are envious of the spiritual master is disrespectful toward the guru and the scriptures. Yeah, respect is hearing submissively from the spiritual master and then trying to apply his teachings. That's respect. Now, we should offer respect to everyone, and we should get to the point of being able to see everyone as a manifestation of our spiritual master. But in the initial stages, we can't do that because we are so entranced by the outward, body that we're faced with someone else and their mind and their intelligence, which are not their soul. So, we envy nearly everyone we encounter in that material world. We're constantly measuring ourselves to them. But by surrendering ourselves to a bona fide spiritual master, one who has proven by example that he is such as he preaches, then our envy will, dissolve, because we will have learned to serve rather than to try and enjoy, which is a major source of impediment for the living entity. I was a major sense enjoyer, and I had to learn how to serve my spiritual master properly. And once I did, then life became very simple. And I'm now very happy because of that. He saved my life. He gave me life. He gave me life. 35. Is there no hope of attaining auspiciousness without serving the guru? How can we attain auspiciousness if we reject the well-wisher who has come to bestow auspiciousness? The spiritual master comes from Vaikuntha. The Lord has sent him. How can we go back to Godhead if we renounce his shelter and association? The spiritual master's mercy is the root of all auspiciousness. What have we actually done to receive his mercy? Rather, we should renounce our false ego and offer our respectful obeisances to his feet. To give up the false ego that I am the seer, I am the enjoyer, is called offering obeisances. Confirmed. That is why the word namaha, obeisance, is added to mantras. Receiving the spiritual master's mercy destroys the sinful mentality that I am the doer. Receiving the spiritual master's mercy awakens the pride that I am the Lord's servant. Material pride, false ego, and all sinful mentalities are removed simply by his influence. I was not accustomed to worshiping my spiritual master every day, but by his mercy I came to know that my only duty was to serve his lotus feet. It is everyone's duty to worship the self-realized spiritual master and follow in his footsteps. We should not follow the blind. The spiritual master is our only well-wisher, our only relative, and our only protector. Only by his mercy are we fortunate enough to know this. After attaining the lotus feet of my spiritual master, I no longer maintain the mentality that without his service I have something else to do. When my spiritual master, who is the Lord's dearmost servant, mercifully imparted knowledge on Nandana's service to me to protect me from false ego, I realized that the living entities have no other duty than to gratify Krishna's senses. Nandana is the only worshipable Lord, and the life and soul and ornament of all living entities. The spiritual master is extremely dear to that Nandana. An unqualified person like me cannot serve such a spiritual master with body, mind, and speech, yet my spiritual master, who is an ocean of mercy and affection, empowers me out of his causeless mercy and treats me with an abundance of love. He is so merciful. If I can attain his mercy, I can realize that I have no other well-wisher in this world. Then simply by his causeless mercy, I will be able to attain the qualification to engage in his service. He is pleased by affectionate service. On the day he bestows his causeless mercy on me and becomes pleased with me, I will properly understand Harikatha. Then nothing other than the service of Guru and Krishna will remain important to me. We should always pray to the spiritual master to become qualified to accept his causeless mercy and empowerment. There is nothing with which to compare the spiritual master's mercy. I am so fortunate that I do not consider the spiritual master great. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna is controlled by his devotion, still I am unable to show gratitude for his causeless mercy. 36. What mentality should a sincere disciple have? Sincere disciples should be completely devoted to their guru. They should know their spiritual master to be as good as God and the only object of their love and devotion. The spiritual master is my eternal master, and I am his eternal servant. This is how a disciple thinks. Service to the spiritual master is a disciple's life ornament and means of survival. Disciples do not know anything except their spiritual master. They always think of their spiritual master while eating, sleeping, dreaming, and serving. They are fully convinced that the spiritual master is the fully independent personality of Godhead. A sincere disciple has the following mentality: even if my spiritual master does not accept service from such an unqualified person as myself, I will always be prepared to render unalloyed service at his feet with body, mind, and words. If he kicks me, I will think it is because of my incompetence. His kick will come because of my faults. He is always right. My temporary sense desires do not distract me from his service even for a moment. My only prayer is that my spiritual master mercifully accepts my service. I pray never to fall into bad association or to fall away from his lotus feet. My only solace is that my spiritual master is more merciful to unqualified persons like me. With a desire to achieve his causeless mercy, I will become greedier for his service. It says in Book of Revelation, which Christ gave to his disciple John to know which things will soonly come to pass, that those whom I love I chasten and I rebuke. That is the job of the spiritual master. They must chasten us. They must make us chaste. And so we should see that as love. He's our Father and he is there for our benefit. Without him, we would wallow in self-pity and all this nonsense of the material world. So it is really for our eternal benefit that he descends and takes away those things that we put our faith in over God. And in this way, our faith becomes sanctified, because in the absence of material objects, all we have is this supreme spiritual object. 37. How do pure devotees respect their spiritual master? The spiritual master is known to ordinary people in one form and to his intimate devotees in another. The pure devotees recognize their spiritual master as the supreme well-wisher, as most dear to Krishna, and as the object of their love and devotion, the object of their eternal service and their life and soul. The spiritual master is most dear to and non-different from Krishna. It is not possible to achieve Krishna's service without serving the spiritual master. Only those who serve the spiritual master can be considered Vaishnavas. We cannot see the spiritual master's lotus feet with sinful eyes. Considering the spiritual master an ordinary human being is a hellish mentality. The spiritual master is not an insignificant creature. He is not an ordinary human being. He is the Supreme Lord and is very dear to the Lord. He is a great personality, an exalted devotee, and an acharya who can award Hari's holy names to others. Yes. 38. Why are our obstacles not destroyed and our desires not fulfilled? Because we think the spiritual master, who is non-different from the Supreme Lord, is a mortal being, our current vision is full of faults. That is why we are unable to sincerely surrender to his lotus feet. We find ourselves in our present pathetic condition because we have transgressed the words of the Vedas, the Supreme Lord, and the Bhagavad Gita, and considered the spiritual master a mortal being, the Vaishnavas as belonging to a particular caste, and the Supreme Lord as made of material elements, stone, wood, or clay. The spiritual master's body is fully spiritualized. Everything he does is for our eternal benefit. We do not have the vision to see this. This should be our mentality. This should be our thought flow. Until we adopt this thought flow, we will continue to be bewildered by the objects around us as they attack us. Only the spiritual master has the ability to spiritualize everything in our lives. And that comes by surrendering to him and his teachings and applying his teachings. Hare Krishna. 39. Where should we repose our faith? We should give up topics about the material world and repose our full faith in the spiritual master's words, because without the spiritual master's mercy, our anarthas, unwanted things of the heart, cannot be destroyed. We must accept our spiritual master as the only means by which we can go back to Godhead. He is our eternal well-wisher. Faith means full confidence in the Guru's words. We do not rely on the words of so-called gurus, religious reformers, or pretenders. All our inauspicious qualities can be vanquished simply by associating with sadhus. By such association, we will attain pure devotional service. Therefore, we should rely implicitly on Sri Guru Dev in order to approach and serve the absolute persons. A sadhu, a saintly person, is one who will revive us from all puzzling doubts. A sadhu gives the highest good. We should make friends with such a guru who truly wishes our highest good. If perchance we meet such a true guru, we cannot help but be saved and reach our goal. Such a guru will always supply and enrich us with transcendental knowledge and service. "40. Anybody into numerology? If Jesus Christ was a Jagad Guru and his instructions capable of bringing us deliverance, why do we need a spiritual master? We accept both the universal spiritual master and the initiating spiritual master. By accepting only the Jagad Guru, universal spiritual master, we may face many unwanted things of the heart. If at present we want to follow Christ's orders by accepting him as universal spiritual master, and we think that we do not require an initiating spiritual master, we will certainly face the doubt about how well we can follow Christ's orders. The Supreme Lord, or universal Jagad Guru, delivers his instructions about the absolute truth only through the disciplic succession. As I sit on the bank of the Ganga in Navadvip, far from the Himalayas where the Ganga originates, and am able to touch her water here, the initiating spiritual master similarly brings the Ganga, a pure devotional service which emanates from the Lord's lotus feet, and places it in my hand and on my head. If the flow of the Ganga does not come to me, then because I am an ordinary, powerless, poor person, I would not have been able to climb the Himalayas to touch her water. Or if the flow of the Ganga from the Himalayas was interrupted on the way, I would have had to face the danger of accepting a polluted flow instead of the pure Ganga. If the instructions Jesus Christ gave 2,000 years ago do not come to us through disciplic succession, or if we have to sort them out from books, then perhaps we may create a blunder and accept a perversion of the truth taught in the name of Christianity. We may even come to accept something opposite from what he taught, thinking it his actual philosophy. The initiating spiritual master is also Jagad Guru because he is a manifestation of the original Jagad Guru. Out of his causeless mercy, he delivers his message of the original Jagad Guru through the disciplic succession. He does not cheat nor flatter the disciple, nor does he yearn for any material gain from me. He is simply a messenger of the absolute truth. Very few people know the life of Jesus Christ. Very few. "41. Should we approach the spiritual master or Lord Gauranga while holding a return ticket? Those who join the moth with a return ticket do not completely want the Supreme Lord. Does a person who actually wants to attain the Supreme Lord wish to return from there? If we awaken our propensity to serve the Supreme Lord, do we want to give up our direct service to the Lord so we can again become busy serving illusory material nature, Maya? Those who have attained spiritual knowledge do not and cannot approach their worshipable Lord with a return ticket. Only those who are puffed up with false ego, who wish to become masters, who have dependents to look after, who adore someone other than God, and who instead of accepting themselves as the spiritual master's servants, proudly proclaim themselves husbands, fathers, learners, foolish, poor, or rich. These persons suffer anxiety and distress because they are intoxicated with the pride of accepting themselves as servants of their wives, sons, and daughters. That is why the scriptures advise us to approach a spiritual master. In approaching, there is no question of return. The Vedas state, Tad Vigyanartham Sagurum Eva Abhigachet. If we want transcendental knowledge, we must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Abhigachet means to take shelter. Yes. And to take shelter means to take full shelter. You cannot have a foot in and a foot out. No. Full shelter. He will protect you. 42. How do we achieve the mercy of Lord Nityananda, the original guru? Quote, I am an expert. Unquote. This is not a transcendentalist mentality. If we realize that there are no persons as fallen, wretched, and unqualified as ourselves in the entire world, then we are eligible to receive the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu, the original guru. If we live with the spiritual master out of pretense, we may find ourselves in trouble. Similarly, if we live away from the spiritual master, we may also be in trouble. But if we maintain staunch faith and love for our spiritual master and the Vaishnavas, we will certainly be benefited regardless of whether we stay with them or live far away from them. One day, a gentleman's son suddenly came to see me. He had passed his entrance examination. He was so detached that he wore a piece of old cloth that only came to above his knee. He came like this every day for a few days. At the time, I was residing in Sri Mayapur and arranging for a property. On seeing my activities, he lost faith in me and went elsewhere. He then fell into bad association and became degraded. Therefore, if we want to measure devotees simply by their external appearance and not by understanding their actual intentions, we will certainly bring ruination on ourselves. The spiritual master engages in divine controversy. In this way, he can help you digest the unwanted things of your heart. If we see the spiritual master on the material platform, as we inevitably do in our conditional stage of life, then we will project our own insecurities onto them, and they will then be able to dissolve those insecurities for us. This is a very confidential, secret piece of information. It's like in confessional, right? You go in and you confess your sins. But now let's say that you don't know who your spiritual master is, but he comes to you in the form of, someone. Sometimes he will come in disguise. And in that way, you are confessing your sins to him because you don't know it's him. So you won't be putting on a show for some holy figure. In this way, he can absorb our sins and digest them in a way that otherwise we wouldn't be able to, purge ourselves of those. So until we can see everyone as our spiritual master and offer everyone respect, we will still have unwanted things that need to be purged, that we are probably repressing down. And so the spiritual master will be presented to us and will, we may direct our anger towards him. And in that way, he can help us digest that, because he doesn't get offended. He sees the material modes of energy working over the top of the spirit soul that's been delivered to him. Do we attain everything by taking shelter at the feet of a bona fide spiritual master? By taking shelter of the spiritual master's lotus feet, we can attain everything, including Krishna's holy name and the mantras in relation to Krishna. But unless we have a strong service attitude toward our spiritual master's lotus feet, we cannot realize these transcendental topics. Unless we take shelter of our spiritual master with firm faith and devotion and proceed on the devotional path under his order, we cannot attain real auspiciousness. The materialists are naturally fond of dry arguments. No one can understand devotional service by following the path of dry argumentation. Unless we take shelter of a Vaishnava spiritual master and execute devotional service under his guidance, we cannot properly utilize our own good intelligence. Therefore, the Shastra states, Guru Padashrayastasmat Krishna Dikshari Shikshanam Vishrambena Guru Seva Sadhu Vartmanu Vartanam. First, one should take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, then he should take initiation and transcendental knowledge from him. He should serve his spiritual master with faith and devotion and follow in the footsteps of a saintly person. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-74. 44. Can we immediately attain Srimati Radhika's lotus feet? It is not that Sri Radharani is not present. Even now we can attain her lotus feet in service. If we can see the beauty of Sri Radharani's toenails at our spiritual master's lotus feet, we will no longer think about where we will find Sri Radharani. If we are fortunate enough, we can attain service to and darshan of Sri Radharani's lotus feet in the darshan of our spiritual master's lotus feet, because he is non-different from Sri Radha and very dear to her. In Madhurya Ras, conjugal loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, the spiritual master is an intimate gopi, friend of Sri Radharani. He is non-different from the daughter of Rishabhanu. Only the sincere disciples of a spiritual master in Madhurya Ras can attain the darshan of the beauty of Sri Radha's toenails in the form of their spiritual master. Only the intimate disciples of a spiritual master can realize that their spiritual master is a manifestation of Sri Radha, and that he is non-different from the daughter of King Vrishabhanu. So, we will get into this at a later date, but Srimati Radharani is the topmost devotee of Sri Krishna. And so, by praying to her, begging her for service, we can then potentially get the opportunity to serve Krishna, because she has his ear. She's his most intimate lover, and so she can whisper sweet nothings into his ear for our benefit. So we are all servants of Sri Radhika. She opens the void that we can then fall into, the material void, and then we fall into spiritual substance. 45. What is the difference between my spiritual master and me? I am more insignificant than the most insignificant, and the spiritual master who is always engaged in serving the Almighty is greater than the greatest. What does it mean to approach a spiritual master and inquire from him? The word pranipat means to surrender, to hear something with full attention. Without pranipat, the hearing process is incomplete. Without pranipat, there is no way to understand the transcendental absolute truth and topics about the spiritual master, Vaishnavas, and the scriptures. The word pariprashna means honest inquiry, or to humbly inquire from the spiritual master. We should be prepared to hear the reply to our inquiry. Inquiring with a doubtful mind is not honest inquiry. To make a show of inquiring while under the control of false ego is also not honest inquiry. Unless we are fully surrendered, we cannot make honest inquiry. But unless a subject matter is clarified through honest inquiry, we cannot begin our service. It seems paradoxical. There are moments that the Supreme Lord opens the material veil and allows us to be sincere to our spiritual master. We should pray for these moments. 47. Is it safe to take disciples? Give up envy and become compassionate toward all living entities. Convert the godless living entities into devotees of Krishna. Do not become a guru and become envious. Do not become a guru so you can drown in the ocean of material enjoyment. Do not become a guru for the sake of formality. But if you can become a sincere servant of your spiritual master and Krishna and attain their mercy, then there is nothing to fear. Otherwise, your degradation is guaranteed. 48. How should I treat my spiritual master? Serve your spiritual master with love and devotion, just as you do Krishna. Consider the spiritual master as good as the Supreme Lord. Do not think him inferior to the Lord in any way. It is a disciple's duty to treat, worship, and serve the spiritual master as if he were God. If a disciple does not do so, he will fall down from his position as a disciple. Only those who consider the spiritual master non-different from the Supreme Lord can understand the confidential purport of the scriptures, chant Hari's holy name, and preach Hari Katha. To teach about his own service, Lord Krishna appears in the form of the spiritual master. If we are fortunate enough, we can understand this flawless scriptural verdict. Otherwise, we will remain doubtful and continue to drown in the ocean of material existence. So that was 48. I'm going to keep going, it looks like. Okay, I'll keep going. The spiritual master is neither the predominating absolute nor the original predominated absolute. He is a manifestation of the original predominated absolute. Lord Krishna is the worshipable God, and the spiritual master is the worshipper God. Lord Krishna is the predominating absolute, and the spiritual master is the predominated absolute. Because the spiritual master, who is the worshipper God, is the personification of service to Krishna himself, he is the most dear to Krishna. This is the special characteristic of the science relating to the spiritual master. Sri Krishna is the energetic, and the spiritual master is his complete energy. The spiritual master is not an ordinary human being. He is the master of the living beings. The spiritual master is the supreme consciousness and a manifestation of the Lord's spiritual energy. But the living entities, as minute spiritual sparks, belong to the Lord's marginal energy and are part and parcel of the Lord. This is a science that should never be forgotten. If you apply it step by step, you will attain the highest goal. There's no speculation. There's no need to concoct things. You just follow, and everything will be fine. 49. What is the difference between the science relating to the spiritual master and the science relating to Sri Radha? Sri Radharani is the original predominated absolute. Sri Radha, the daughter of Rishabhanu, is the crest jewel of all acharyas of Madhurya Ras, conjugal loving relationship with the Lord, and of all lovers of Krishna. Our spiritual master, who is an acharya in the line of Madhurya Ras, is Sri Radha's dear companion. Acharya means spiritual general. He is an eternally perfected Vraj Gopi. By discussing the writings of Sri Narottam Das Thakur, which state the Guru Rupa Shaki Bame, on the left, the Shaki in the form of the spiritual master is situated. It is clearly understood that the spiritual master, or Shaki, is the manifestation of the daughter of Rishabhanu, Radharani, and is non-different from her. How determined should we be to serve the spiritual master's lotus feet? A real disciple accepts the spiritual master as servitor God, most dear to Krishna. He never considers his spiritual master inferior to the Lord in any way. A sincere disciple serves and worships his spiritual master as if he were God. Those who do not follow this principle fall down from their position as disciples. Until we see the spiritual master as a manifestation and non-different from the Supreme Lord, we will not be able to chant the Lord's name purely. And this is the only way we can be delivered, by chanting the Lord's holy names purely. A genuine disciple must possess firm determination and faith in his spiritual master, thinking, I will serve my spiritual master and Lord Gauranga, who with utmost simplicity. I will follow my spiritual master's instructions, which have come down from the Supreme Lord. I will never disobey my spiritual master's orders under the influence of anyone in this world. If following my spiritual master means I must become proud or an animal or go to hell forever, I will never hesitate. I will not follow anyone other than my spiritual master. I will destroy the current of mundane thought by the strength of his instructions. If my spiritual master showers even a particle of pollen from his lotus feet upon the world, then millions of people will be delivered. There is no knowledge or proper conduct. There is no knowledge or proper code of conduct in the 14 worlds that weighs more than a particle of dust from the lotus feet of my spiritual master. I attest. Wow. (51) What instruction does a bona fide spiritual master give? There is no scarcity of instructors in this world. People in this world advise us to pay special attention to our immediate needs, but this creates more bad than good because our needs go on increasing. While trying to fulfill our temporary needs, we drown in the ocean of unlimited needs and difficulties. It's like throwing petrol on a fire. It is neither beneficial for us to live in this world with attachment nor to display detachment. We should become free from the cheaters who, in the guise of saints, induce ordinary people to aim for religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, and who are busy trying to make ordinary people as apparently religious as themselves. The projection I was talking about. Instead, we should become intelligent enough to concentrate our minds on topics about Sri Chaitanya Dev. Brihaspati is the spiritual master of the demigods. He instructs the demigods in such a way that they can enjoy a better standard of life. Both Brihaspati's sharp intelligence and his instructions on religious principles are meant simply to increase his disciples' enjoying propensity. There are many good instructors in human society too. Family priests, community leaders, country leaders, and relatives, whose instructions are simply meant. Interesting wording. There are also family spiritual masters such as Vasistha, who instruct their disciples to renounce sense gratification. But a Vaishnava spiritual master instructs people only to worship Hari. He makes neither material enjoyment nor dry renunciation the goal of his instructions. Instead, he instructs others for their eternal benefit. The taste of bitter things is relishable by those who have submitted to reformation, who have fully surrendered to it. 52. Don't you have many disciples? I have not made any disciples. Everyone is my spiritual master. I learn something from everyone. My only prayer is that they may mercifully award me the opportunity to follow their non-duplicitous ideal of worshiping the Lord. 53. What does a spiritual master give to a surrendered soul? The spiritual master gives a surrendered soul the spiritual name. The spiritual master is non-different from the Supreme Lord and personifies devotional service. We should never disregard the spiritual master or consider him an ordinary human being. If we disregard the spiritual master, we commit a grave offense. Similarly, there is no difference between the transcendental sound vibration and the transcendental Lord. Krishna's holy name and Krishna himself are non-different. The holy name is not a product of the material world. The holy name is not an object of our vision. Rather, he is the seer. Only a bona fide spiritual master who is dear to Krishna can bestow Krishna on others. Krishna Katha should be heard only from the Vaishnava spiritual master. No one but devotees can speak about the Lord. If we approach karmis, jnanis, yogis, or worldly teachers to hear something, they will only discuss maya, illusory things of the material nature. They accept neither the Lord's eternal existence nor the fact that the Lord is eternal and full of knowledge and bliss. Such people consider both the Lord's incarnations and the spiritual master to be mortal beings. A spiritual master awards his surrendered disciples Krishna's holy name and the mantras in relation to Krishna. Krishna mantras are topmost. There is no mantra as powerful as Krishna mantra. If we learn to chant these Krishna mantras perfectly, all our mental speculation will be destroyed. So the main mantra is the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. But we are unable to chant that purely in our contaminated condition. And so we are advised to chant Gauranga's name and Nityananda's name. So Gauranga Nityananda, Gauranga Nityananda, Gauranga Nityananda, Nityananda Chaitanya, Nityananda Chaitanya. In this way, we will be able to enter into the Hare Krishna mantra after our offenses have been dispelled. So Chaitanya was the incarnation of Krishna for this age, and he delivered the Sankirtan movement. And we'll get into that more later, but the important thing to know is that first chant his names, Chaitanya Nityananda, Gauranga Nityananda, and then we can enter into the Hare Krishna mantra once we feel the Lord within us. As long as we consider our spiritual master an ordinary being, we will not be able to understand the holy name's glories. We will not become spiritually successful if we consider Sri Chaitanya Dev an ordinary human being. Simply by the spiritual master's mercy can we understand the glories of Sri Gaura Sundar and Vraj Dham. So Chaitanya Dev, Gaura Sundar, Gauranga Dev, Chaitanya, these are all names of the incarnation of Krishna for this age, the age of Kali Yuga, which is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So the mantra, the mercy given by Chaitanya is like the floodgates being opened. There's no need to go out and get it. It's like drinking water out of your hand. You don't need to go drill a well. You don't need to go get water from the well. You don't even need to bring the water to your house. It's there. You chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, you become purified. It's that simple. The spiritual master is an eternal kunj on the shore of Sri Radhakund. There he has bound Krishna by the power of his service. Simply by his mercy we can attain the shelter of Govardhan Hill. Govardhan Hill is another form of Krishna. If we are filled with mental speculation, we will see Govardhan only as a stone mountain. But the place where Vrishabhanu's daughter enjoys her pastimes is not an ordinary place made of clay in this world. It is transcendental and decorated with spiritual gems. It is by our spiritual master's mercy that we can aspire to attain the intimate service of Sri Radha Madhava. All our inauspiciousness is destroyed, and our auspiciousness created simply by the spiritual master's mercy. It is impossible to know Krishna either by sinful endeavor or worldly morality. We can understand him only through pure devotional service. It is possible to learn to practice this pure devotion only by the spiritual master's mercy. Krishna Katha is certainly an invaluable asset. Actually, it is the only asset as we attempt to progress on the path leading to Goloka. Goloka is Krishna's abode. It means planet of the cows. It's the topmost destination for all living entities. In Goloka, every word is a song, every step is a dance, and every moment is new, fresh, and exciting. So we can make that on earth if we follow properly. That's a long way out. First, we must learn how to surrender to the spiritual master, and then he can guide us. Krishna Katha is non-different from Krishna himself. Any topic not related to Krishna is actually useless. Therefore, Krishna Katha should be preached extensively in this world. We can hear topics about Krishna or Vaikuntha from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master who is a resident of Vraj. At present, we spend our time thinking about our body, which is a bag of bones and flesh, and have given up topics about Krishna. Therefore, we identify with material objects and do not attain self-realization. 54. Should we discuss the spiritual master's instructions every day? Among Vaishnavas, the spiritual master is topmost. It is essential to listen externally. It is essential to listen eternally to the instructions of the spiritual master who is dear to Krishna. If we do not discuss or hear our spiritual master's instructions every day, but engage in other activities, we will simply invite distress. We should not imitate the spiritual master or the Vaishnavas. Such imitation constitutes bad association. Rather, we should follow in their footsteps. We should associate with those devotees in whose hearts the Lord resides. Devotees and non-devotees Liberated souls and conditioned souls, perfect souls and imperfect souls, these are not one and the same. Raw rice is not fit for our eating. It becomes fit only after it is cooked. Similarly, we should associate with perfected beings. That is both most desirable and auspicious. Okay, I'm going to end there. We will pick up with part 3 at a later time. I think there are 26 or 27 more numbers in this chapter, but it's always beneficial to listen and then to re-listen. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.